Welcome to episode 70 of the AskShell.com podcast. We are answering emails from homeowners like yourself. If you want an email answered by Shell or myself, Morgan, you can send it through on AskShell.com. It is free for you, and we do not share emails. Shell, how are you today?
Absolutely top drawer, Morgan, and it's so nice to be able to sit back and relax and answer questions here on the podcast every weekend so we can get the information out there to our club members and take care of their questions, because there's always good questions.
There is always good questions, and before we get to those questions this week, I wanted to know, last weekend was Thanksgiving. Did you get your turkey?
Did I get turkey? I got two great dinners of turkey, and then one afterwards that was leftovers. Oh, I love leftovers. Folks, they're the best.
They are the best. On today's show, we've got Tony Gioventu. He's still up north, but we do have a question that he sent in for us that I'm going to read the question, and Shell, you're going to get the answer for the homeowners out there.
Absolutely, because Tony has sent through his office the answers to the questions that we have sent to him, and with that taking place, Tony, very likely we will run this particular format while he's out on the road, because he's out of the Greater Vancouver a lot.
And it worked quite good for us.
Oh, yeah, it's really good. It gives me an opportunity to maybe ad-lib my information in addition to maybe relating to something that's happened with one of our club members.
Excellent.
Yeah.
The emails I'm going to ask you about today, Shell: insulation for an outdoor pipe, what to do with a sump pump hose in the wintertime, stair nosing is coming loose, a musty smell at a cabin, modifying the light output of an LED bulb, and the best foundation for building a shop.
Oh boy, I'll tell you, there's some good questions, and I can see there, not only are they Greater Vancouver and throughout British Columbia, but there's got to be one that's back on the prairies there somewhere building a shop, because there's a lot of equipment, farm equipment, and they always like a great shop.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the first email. This one is insulation for an outdoor pipe. Shell, enjoyed your program for many, many years. You are such a wealth of information. You have made many household fixes amazingly straightforward. Insulation for an outdoor pipe. What is the best product to use? A wraparound pipe one, or the other one that you don't wrap around the pipe? Home Depot sells the wraparound, and Lowe's sells the other one. Many years ago on your radio program, you had a great suggestion for cleaning metal: boiling it in water and something else. It was so simple and so effective. What was that something else? Thanks again, Frederick.
Well, Frederick, there's a whole lot of information in there that you're requiring, and when you're dealing with insulating pipes, first of all, insulating pipes is something that you really have to say, are they going to be in the ground, on top of the ground, underneath the floor, in the joist cavity? Where are they going to be? Well, depending on where they're going to be is going to be relevant to what it is you're going to use. And but good, better, best, one of the best ones to use is the foil wrap. That's the bubble plastic with the foil on both sides. Comes in dimensional, anywhere from 2 inches right up to 4 feet wide. You can cut it, you can wrap it, you can tape it, you can use the aluminum foil tape in order to apply it to the pipe. You can bury it. All these things can be done. The most important thing is good, better, best. Get the best one. The foam enclosure ones, that's the one that you actually open up and snap over top of the pipe. They're normally used above grade, or up between the joists, or between the studs, or somewhere in the building structural envelope. In the ground, you can use the foil as well as in that location. And the foil actually works just like your a coffee cup, for an example. Works on the basis of reflection. The heat that's inside the cup tries to get away to the cold side, which is being attracted to it, and it's reflected back because that foil is there. But the insulation, being the bubble plastic, is what's actually going to be doing the real insulating value. So, but you got to make sure it's taped up. You can't allow water to get in around unless it's just groundwater, and groundwater is going to drain back. But you do want to tape it. Use the tuck tape or the taking duct tape is not really that great in the ground. So you want to use the red tuck tape, it's called, which is an insulation tape, or, as I say, the foil tape that is made for the product. But some people will tend to go a little lesser expensive. The foil tape is more expensive than the tuck tape. So, but the foil is the one that you want to use. Now, as far as the what to clean metal and in boiling water, all of these things are okay. And I don't normally get involved in giving recipes of this nature out over the telephone lines or out over a broadcast line. And this particular case here, you never know what metal happens to be being cleaned. Is it brass? Is it bronze? Is it silver? Is it just steel? Or what it is? You just can't be giving some of these things out unless we talk directly to the individual.
Right.
But one of the things I can make reference to is that if they go to, and we can put this right on the screen, contact the Mohawk finishing people.
Right.
And they have outlets, or they sell to different retailers throughout the country. So therefore you get a hold of Mohawk and advise them what it is you want to do, and they can advise you of where you can go to get it, or possibly even just get it from them and have them ship it out to you. And we used to have a product, for example, we sold called Maas, M-A-A-S. But Maas was a product from the stateside. It happened to come with no French on the label, so therefore it was something that we just were not able to bring it in any longer because of not being something that was according to their rules and regulations of importing.
Right.
So Maas became non-available from us.
No moss.
No Maas. And but you may still have the product available to purchase, maybe from Ace Hardware or something like that, because Ace has a distribution resource out of the United States. So maybe they would have it, or have it available that they could bring it in. But that was an actual lotion that you put on. It was actually like a cream lotion that you would apply with a sponge and then rub it down with a soft cloth. The one that they're speaking of is one that you put in the water and you boil. And you put whatever it is you're going to clean in it. And quite often you see it sold at home shows and the likes. But you got to be careful, because you don't want to be taking the silver off a piece of silverware, which happens to be just a plating rather than an actual silver piece.
You're probably not going to get that back on.
You're not going to get back on, and I don't want to be responsible for that sort of thing, because it might be grandmas or moms or
Passed down through many generations.
Down to many generations. Yeah. So all I can say is, when in doubt, don't pout. Let you help you out. Our telephone number right on the screen, folks. 604-542-2236. It's just that easy.
Excellent. A reminder that we are also recording this in a video cast.
Oh, yes.
So if you're used to listening to the podcast audio only, you can go to Shell's YouTube channel. Just search for Shell Busey. It will be posted up there. It will also be on AskShell.com as well. We've got some feedback. People really enjoyed the video last week.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep going.
And you'll be able to see the smiling face of Morgan.
Yes, and we include, when you were talking about the foil, we can show that on the screen.
Exactly.
And the different products that we talk about.
Absolutely.
People can actually see what they are. So we think it's a big upgrade. So check out our videos.
And that's what it's all. And tell your friends, for goodness sakes. Don't let it just go vaporize. Tell your friends. We help you.
Email number 2. My house is 5 years old and I live in Winnipeg. I have a sump pump that has been working all through the summer. Before the snow falls, should I remove the hose and leave the spigot as is? Is there anything else I should do to prepare for winter? Thanks, Tony.
Well, when you are relating to sump pumps are normally in a catchment sump. because the catchment sump is what has to be pumped in order to get it outside, and that's where the hose comes in. I'm a little bit concerned as to the spigot, because if there's a spigot and it is an outside sump, then you could be dealing with frost there as well. And you can't really deal with a frost-free spigot if it is outside in Winnipeg during the winter months, where you could have a wind chill factor of anywhere up to, oh gosh, it's not unusual, it would be minus 40.
Right.
Well, it's going to freeze. Mm-hmm. And if it's in a frost-free, even though it's a spigot that you could shut off, you could still run into a problem with expansion through frost and freezing, ice freezing in the actual spigot. The hose itself, and the hose is the pipe that obviously goes wherever they're draining the water to, and you can't leave that during the winter, because if there's any water being pumped, then you know what happens there. The pipe is going to be the hose, and the hose is going to freeze just like any other pipe would, being on the ground, and you're going to have a problem there. So my answer to this would be just drain everything, take the spigot off and put it inside, because in the wintertime, when it is cold, you don't have a lot of water going into that sump, if any at all, because the colder it gets, the drier it gets, the water table goes down, so therefore you won't have. And the colder it gets, the drier it gets, it's not going to be raining. So that's not a concern. Sure, you may have icicles, and when you get a nice warm day in the sun, and you get the icicles dripping, but hey, that's one of those things that you kind of deal with it when it takes place. So
right.
You just got to understand that sumps, anything that has water containment, and it's outside in the area that's going to be affected by the cold, then you're going to have to do something with it in order to support and control freezing.
Would you have to turn the sump pump off as well?
Take the pump right out of there.
Take it right out.
Take it right out, because a sump pump has got an impeller in it, and that impeller has got an opening for the water to be drawn from the base of the sump, collecting sump, and that's going to have water in it. So you don't want that to freeze, and then you got a casing freezing and cracking, and then you get more problems.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it's a good idea to mark your calendar in the spring for when you should put that sump pump back down there, so it doesn't lead to more problems when the melt comes.
Tie a string around the candle, when the candle burns down, it drops onto the old frying pan, and you know it's time to do it.
Next email.
You.
I have multiple sclerosis, so my walking is difficult. I recently had hardwood laminate installed, and it seems to be dislodging the nosing on the basement steps. Can you recommend the strongest way to attach them? Thank you so much, Rock.
Well, Rock, hard as a rock, I guess, really, when it comes right down to it. That's an interesting name, Rock. The real concern here is what's being used and how it's being fastened. And it sounds very like, to me, that it's more than anything else like a contact, or it could even be a self-adhesive strip that was on the nosing. And any of those items are only as good as the surface that they're being adhered to. For an example, if there's any dust on the surface at the time you pull the strip and then put it in place where you want it to be adhered to, it's not going to work. So first you want to wipe down using a wet cloth and a cleaner, but not a harsh cleaner. It could even be the old faithful here, Shell Busey's Home Improvement. We call it the House Smart cleaning solution, I guess, because it's been on the roof. Oh gosh, it's been around for 20 years now?
Must be.
The home cleaning formula. So the home cleaning formula, folks, is available at pretty well all your building supply stores now. Rona's included, and I'm sure that Home Hardware, a lot of them, Windsor Plywood, Cloverdale Paints, all those places. But wipe it down, rinse it, allow it to dry. If you want to do it right away, take your hair dryer and dry it. That way you've got a nice surface to go down on. And then use a construction adhesive, Morgan.
Construction adhesive.
Construction adhesive, because construction adhesive is a product that comes out of a tube. You can buy small tubes. You don't have to buy a whole 13-ounce tube. And apply it in such a way that when you put the nosing in place, clamp it. Clamp it. Now, I don't mean to go out and buy a set of C-clamps. And C-clamps, in fact, I'll give you a C-clamp. You can take a picture of this so folks don't relate to it sometimes as a C-clamp. Why it's called a C-clamp, whatever. It looks like a C, really. But you can also use anything like a duct tape. You can use duct tape to adhere, first of all, the nosing, and put the nosing back onto the floor, and also the riser below where the nosing is being applied. So anything to hold it in place until the glue sets, and the glue should be allowed to set overnight. Okay, so 12 hours you want the adhesive to set and hold your unit in place. If there's screw holes, then obviously you're going to get some of the adhesive oozing out through those holes. And if that being the case, just take the screws and just put the screws in place, and then wipe off using a solvent. The rest of your cleaning is all complete, but the rest of that adhesive that's maybe oozing out takes it off, and it won't harm the flooring. It won't harm the vinyl or the laminate flooring, okay, or even the wood flooring for that sake. But it's called contact cement solvent, and you buy that at pretty well any one of your buildings supply stores, paint department, or like Windsor Plywood Stores, that type of thing. Okay.
Excellent. You're listening to episode 70 of the AskShell.com podcast. Myself, Morgan, is reading the questions. Shell is answering them. So we'll get on to the next email. We have a small 650 square foot summer cabin that just sits on blocks about 20 to 24 inches off the ground and is skirted. We have a musty smell in the cabin all the time, and I think it's due to the ground never really drying out under the cabin. I have vents for the skirting for the airflow. Any suggestions? Thanks, Blaine.
Well, Morgan, Blaine's got a very good point, because there's a lot of skirted buildings around a beach or a lake, especially the cottages, because in most cases they're built on stilts in order to compensate for the falling sloping land. So therefore they have the falling sloping land, and they got their cottage sitting up on top of the piers, so to speak, and then you skirt it out. And it's one thing to vent the skirt, but venting the skirt is only going to allow a lot of moisture in as well. So we always say open the vents in the summertime, close the vents in the wintertime, but it's in the wintertime when you're going to have spring melt or even fall snow melt, and you get a lot of moisture getting in underneath there. So it's not a bad idea to make sure that you do insulate the skirting, and you do put polyethylene vapor barrier on the inside, because if there's any heat at all at any time of the year, and heat isn't all that bad if you want to stay out there for particular times of the year, because when you heat air that's moist, then it expands, and when it expands, it will find a way out of a skirted cottage wraparound. It'll get out because nothing's that tight. But the insulation will stop any driving wind, that sort of thing. But I like to say, first of all, you cover the ground with polyethylene, using a 6 mil polyethylene, and put sand on top of it for ballast to hold it in place. And then putting a garage ventilation kit. And a garage ventilation kit, we'll send the information, we'll put it right on the podcast, because we can take a picture from our product line and show it. They're manufactured in Manitoba, but they're called a garage vent. They're powered, so you got to apply the wiring necessary to operate it. But the nice thing about it's got a dehumidistat on it, and you set that dehumidistat at the moisture level that you want and control, and that's keeping air flowing in there. So therefore, you don't get the moisture, you don't get the influence of moisture coming out underneath the plastic, because the plastic's holding that down, but it exhausts that moist air, and the makeup air that come back into it will find its own leak points to come in. So you keep it nice and dry and odor free. It's just that easy.
On to the next email. A reminder, we do have an email for Tony Gioventu coming up later in the show that Shell will read. But the next email for you, Shell. Hello, I had a great deal on a package of 8 LED 60-watt equivalent bulbs. The kind that look like a regular incandescent with the electronics in the base of the bulb, but I have a need for a bulb more like a 40-watt Would it be okay to use some tin foil over the top half of a 60-watt equivalent LED to drop its light output? I would use it in a table lamp beside my desktop computer. Thank you, Michael Shell. I think I know where you're going to go with this one.
Oh man, oh man. Michael, it blows me away what some people want to do. And the answer is no, okay? Period. If you want to dim an LED, put a dimmer switch on. And then you can dim it down to wherever you want. If you want it 30, 40, 50, 60 at full output, fine and dandy. And dimmer switches are not that expensive, especially when you're dealing with a low wattage of an LED.
And could you attach those to a desk lamp?
Oh, sure. Well, the desk lamp plugs into a 110.
Yeah.
So it's no problem whatsoever. And but the LEDs are really in right now. And we have some LEDs. And the nice thing about LEDs, folks, if you're not aware and you have a lot of floodlights or flood bulbs in pot lights in your living room or kitchen, those pot lights being halogen, they're hot. I mean, they're hot. They're like a heater.
Yeah.
So you get them all above you, and you get them focused on your dinner table or whatever. It's not very comfortable. LEDs virtually eliminate any heat transfer, and they're cool. They're not only cool to look at, they're cool because they're temperature wise. But LEDs, light emitting diode, is what that stands for. It's really the way to go. They are expensive, but they are coming down in price. And I know that they are on sale from time to time, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But through the buying of bulbs, like the 8 LEDs with the equivalent to a 60 watt, first of all, you don't have the heat, but put a dimmer on it. We have a dimmer even on our LEDs. And it's amazing how you can dim them down, but the color's still there. So they are a very, very good color rendition when it comes to lighting. So no is the answer with the foil. You don't want to get any foil near anything that goes into a socket with 110 voltage there anyway. I don't want you lighting up. But it's just,
you'd think some sparks could come out of that.
Well, you don't put metal in anywhere. Same thing, you don't wrap your sandwich in aluminum foil and put it in the microwave either, unless you want to really have crackles and pops. But anyway, that's out of the question. So don't do it.
Excellent. The answer is no. And our last email before we get to Tony Gioventu's email, I'm planning on building a shop. It will be 40 by 60 in northeastern Alberta. What is the best foundation to use? Thanks, Shannon.
Well, I wasn't that far wrong, was I? That it was back in the prairies, being in Alberta. But it's a shop. It'd like to be at the one of the farms, and they're going to be working on their equipment over the winter months, and they're going to be crawling around on the floor, and so therefore you want nice comfort there, and you want it to dry up if there's any vehicles that come in the wintertime with snow or slush off the roads, all that sort of thing. But the question is, what would be the foundation? And there's many ways you can do this. You can use the foam block foundation system that you can put your concrete in place and then place that on top of your footing, those blocks that is, and then you have a nice, warm, well-insulated footing concrete wall. Then you bring your floor up to it, but your floor you're going to include in the floor radiant heating pipes, so therefore you're going to have your own hydronic system in the slab, so the slab is going to warm up, nice to crawl around on underneath a cold machine that is brought in. You can pour a in place curb wall, which you can form up, and from that include your floor in itself from one pour from one side to the other. The curb wall being what you're going to build your structure on top of, your frame structure, your dimensional lumber structure that is. Or you can even go to a wood foundation, which would be a wood foundation insulated with proper dimensional lumber to form the structural part of the foundation, and from that point sit that down on top of a concrete footing, and or even a dimensional treated wood footing, and then place your concrete up to that. If concrete is going to be available to you by truck, which I'm sure it is today, you can pretty well get concrete anywhere as far as delivered. So all that being said, the most important thing is that you have the radiant hydronic system in the floor heat-wise, because there's nothing like a concrete sink to give you and generate the heat for the building and also comfort for you crawling around on the floor. It's just a great way to go. Built many pole barns. Pole barns, another type of barn, another type of workshop building that you can build as well. Nothing wrong with a pole barn. Building a pole barn, you put your poles in the ground, as you know, and then frame by strapping purlins on the side walls, and then from that point insulated and finish on the inside. So there's all kinds of ways of doing it, and steel siding and steel roofing, colored steel, etc., etc. So that's what I'd be doing, and to me, I think that that's going to be more than what you would get, for an example, of placing a full building of concrete wall or a tilt-up, that sort of thing. So a tilt-up is not all that warm, and a tilt-up is when you pour it flat on the ground and then you bring it up into place, a tilt-up building. Okay. And they can be pretty cool. A lot of commercial industrial type of buildings built that way today. But out on the ranches and what have you, that I think a foam wall, even a frame wall on top of poles or up against poles. But that's what I do. Excellent. Radiant heat, most important.
Excellent. Well, that's all the emails I have for you, Shell. I've got an email that Tony Gioventu sent in to us, so we will get to it right now. I will ask the question. Shell, you will answer it. This one comes from Andrea. Dear Tony, we have a unique situation in our strata. I am the president of a condo building located at a BC ski resort and am the only council member who resides in BC. The other 5 council members live in Calgary, Toronto, Seattle, Columbus, and London. We try to schedule meetings so we can hold conference calls to make decisions, but due to the time changes and working schedules, we have had to resort to making decisions by email. But several owners have complained that we are not complying with the Strata Act or our bylaws by not holding meetings. Our strata has no choice because we were the only owners prepared to volunteer for council. Any suggestions on how to solve this issue would be most welcome. Andrea K.
Well, Andrea, welcome to the position of council on a strata, or being in control of the strata, because it is really, and I'll put it bluntly, a thankless job. And thank the good Lord that we do have a gentleman like Tony Gioventu available to us at times live on our podcast, but even having the information sent to us for me to read makes a whole lot of difference to me, first of all, because I know it's coming from him, and he is certainly well informed, being the executive director of the Condominium Association, the CHOA. Right. And but in any event, let's read his answer. This is what Tony says. Dear Andrea, since the introduction of the Strata Titles Act in the 1960s, there has been significant changes in the technology, especially communications. And boy, is that putting it in a nutshell. The value of council meetings is to ensure that council members have the opportunity to debate. Well, that is, if debate can take place without a lot of upset or people being paranoid and all the rest of it that goes along with it. So you can discuss and become informal on subjects before they make decisions. So smart. If the bylaws of the Strata Corporation permit decisions by email, and the chairperson convening the meeting understands the application, then so be the way it's going to operate. First step is for your Strata Corporation to adopt bylaws that permits decisions at meetings that are being held via email, or other written methods. The email process would permit resolution or motion to be debated and responded to by all council members for a specific period of time. 72 hours, for example, with every council member having the benefit of a reply to all. And we all know what that's all about. When you receive an email and you want to send back, you're going to reply to all. So the reply to all responds so they can provide their decision on the motion. This permits any council member within the 72-hour period to read and to respond to the proposed motions, provide their feedback and pose questions, and finally provide their decision. Don't forget that the voting procedures will have to be reviewed. Will an email meeting require unanimous consent of all council or approval of the majority of council? What is the minimum number of council members required to approve a motion? And that normally is called the quorum. A free online service like join.me or Skype can also be used where the president chair is host and everybody logs into a real time on that line meeting. Documents and information can be shared and each council member can use an online chat or the council may have a real-time conference call. Now I'm into this, hanging on there for a moment for a comment from me. Not everybody is inclined to be able to use Skype or join me, all that internet language. And I can see it if it's a small strata with maybe 5 people and they're all up to date on their technology and what's capable of and what have you. That's fine. But when you get into, say, 30 to 50 units or more, then it's kind of hard to have everybody on Skype. That's a protocol that you'd have to really deal with. There are limits to electronic or email type of meetings. It may not be possible to permit observers unless they are permitted access to the electronic proceedings, and you may not be able to conduct hearings for bylaw violations, hardship applications, or a hearing request by an owner under the Act. These will still require a real-time meeting of the council, which could be a conference call, provided the parties are aware of the privacy limitations. The second step, if the bylaw permit electronic or email meetings, you are still required to inform the owners the decisions of the council. There are a number of sections in the Act where the owners must be informed about decisions of council, such as emergency expenses, new rules, or borrowing money from the contingency fund, which require notice to the owners. How minutes of your decisions and notices to the owners are conducted should be also included in the bylaws. Many strata corporations now host websites where they can post minutes of meetings and notices to the owners. Consult with a lawyer to develop a bylaw that permits email at meetings, and especially electronic meetings, which identifies the procedures for the meeting, how decisions are made and how they are reported to the owners, and how the Strata Corporation is going to conduct hearings that comply with the Act. This article was written by Tony Gioventu and read by myself personally, Shel Busey, and you can see where there is a concern when it comes to the type of inquiry does come out of such things as ownership and ownership that are distant from the location of the building that they own.
Well, especially at a place like a ski resort where the owner's probably renting it out on Airbnb for weekly rentals or even weekend rentals. So there's a lot of people coming through there, so they don't live at the location. So yeah, you really do need a way to communicate through different time
I
zones.
think
and different
Airbnb
territories.
is going to be something that's going to be dealt with even more so now over the next few months, because you hear a lot about in the news media, TV news, radio, newspapers,
Right.
because when in doubt, let Shell help you out, and that's why we go to Tony Gioventu for the answers. So I'm sure we'll be getting some questions, because I'm also sure, because I've talked to people that are already concerned about their unit that they have up at the lake, or their unit that they have downtown in Metro Vancouver, for an example, and renting it out when there's a no rental policy within their bylaws. So taking advantage of something, you got to be very careful, because I've always said, and I truly believe, normally the people who will turn you in will be your immediate next door neighbor or next door neighbor on the lot.
Right.
So you got to be very, very careful and be cautious when you do go outside of the rules and regulations.
And the government's just looking for a chance to get their cut of that Airbnb money as well. So
Oh boy!
any
I tell
excuse,
you.
they're going to jump all over that. But
Yeah.
well, Shell, we've come to the end of episode 70. If you have a question that you would like to submit for episode 71, it is easy. Just go to askshell.com and send it through to us, and we will get it off to Shell. Tell your friends, tell your family. Shell, we'll talk to you in episode 71 next week.
Absolutely, Morgan, and I want to leave you this with one thought based upon that last comment on the Airbnb, folks, and that is this, that I am not personally against anyone making extra dollars based upon rental of a suite, rental of your own home or resident, be it wherever, apartment or condominium or townhouse. What it is that you don't want to be caught in that rock in a hard spot when you're dealing with bylaws or agreements or rules and regulations. It's just that easy, because it is well received by a lot of people. You hear a lot of very positive accounts of what they have experienced through their holidays and their journeys into different areas of the world. But folks, from me to you, always be on the proactive end of things and always do what you think is right, but check first. Okay? It's just that easy. So we'll be talking to you next week when we will be dealing with episode number 71. Love you all. Bye for now.